Hello one and all, it's another one of my history videos, military history videos. Today we're going to talk about why the Third Reich lost World War II. And I'm going to be reading off the computer screen, so if I'm not looking at the camera, that's why. So without further ado, let's go on. The early stages of the war, arming the Wehrmacht and the political scenery went very well for Germany. Austria and Czechoslovakia were taken without a fight. Poland fought back hard, but was finished in 18 days after the USSR came in on the 17th. Poland surrendered. However, the Third Reich failed to begin total mobilization after Britain and France declared war on them. Ending the war in France in six weeks was a stunning victory for the Wehrmacht, made possible by Heinz Guderian, Erich von Manstein, and the soldiers of the Wehrmacht. However, it was not without its flaws. Rundstedt and Hitler ignored Guderian when he wanted to destroy the BEF, the British Expansionary Force at Dunkirk. The 300,000 men strong force was just sitting there running back to the UK in pure panic, and this big, juicy, golden target was let go. If they had captured the BEF, it would have been a massive blow to the British war effort. 300,000 captured soldiers would have depleted the British manpower reserves and morale. The UK probably would have sued for peace if the BEF was lost, thus resulting in total victory for Germany in the West. During the Battle of Britain, Hitler ordered the Luftwaffe to stop targeting RAF airfields and industrial plants and attacking British cities. This only strengthened the British resolve to fight and win. The British Empire was the largest overseas empire ever created. However, it was dying and not that strong, at least not as it had been in the World War I or the Victorian era. If Germany had just kept pounding Britain with air raid after air raid, slowly but surely they would surely but slowly give way, and Operation Sea Lion could begin. I think British ground forces could have put a huge dent in the invasion force, but I don't think they could have defeated the Wehrmacht. Trusting Italy to secure Africa and the Balkans was a huge mistake as well. The Italians launched an invasion of southern France during the 6-week battle, and they did very poorly. This was a campaign that the German High Command and most people today pay no attention to. The resources wasted on the Africa Corps, the Balkans campaign, to undo Italian failures were great in number. The campaign in Africa could have been avoided completely, and the Balkan campaign could have been over much sooner. Germany would have been far better off not allying itself to Mussolini's Italy and going it alone or sending in German advisors to build up the Italian military. Operation Barbarossa was launched before Britain could be taken care of, thus beginning a two-front war. The Wehrmacht won victory after victory on the Russian steppe, destroying whole Soviet fronts or army groups for those of you who don't speak Soviet military lingo. The victory at Kiev yielded over 600,000 Soviets killed or captured. However, Barbarossa displays Blitzkrieg's main and pretty much only flaw. If it fails, there's almost never a plan B. And thus, Germany found itself in a long war they did not prepare for. Hitler didn't send troops away from Army Group Center to Ukraine and Leningrad. Leningrad could have been in German hands, but Hitler ordered the Wehrmacht not to enter the city. Thus, the Germans didn't have the logistics to get the winter gear up there in time, and then infamous General Winter came into play. Germany was not, as stated earlier, was not prepared for a long war. Germany then declared war on the United States. This was a massive mistake on Hitler's part. Germany was not required by the Tripartite Pact to do so, and it tossed its free ride of avoiding war with the U.S. down the trash. Germany could have gotten Japan to attack the Soviet forces in eastern Siberia, thus forcing Stalin to leave Moscow pretty much defenseless, i.e. putting them in a two-front war. Germany and Japan pretty much did their own thing throughout much of the war, and they pretty much weren't allies at all. A year later, with the offensive on Stalingrad in full swing, Hitler sent the Wehrmacht into the industrial powerhouse of Stalingrad and to the oil fields of the Caucasus. The whole offensive lost its power because it went after two targets instead of just one, when it only had enough to achieve a single one of these objectives. Personally, I would have gone for the Caucasus oil fields, but that's just me. When Georgy Zhukov launched Operation Uranus, Hitler foolishly ordered Paulus to hold Stalingrad. The Sixth Army had a chance to escape, but Hitler turned it down, and 300,000 troops of the Sixth Army were lost as a result. These 300,000 men could have come in handy in operations on the Eastern Front yet to come. The Sixth Army at Kursk, can you say German victory? And a connived victory, like total annihilation with 500,000 Soviet soldiers killed or taken prisoner. That sounds pretty nice to me. Kursk was another blunder on Germany's part. Victory after Stalingrad was not possible, but the Wehrmacht had went on the defensive and stayed there. Germany might have achieved a standstill. Refusing Manstein's plan to backslap the Red Army after Kharkov, he went on to attack Kursk. Operation Citadel had no chance of success, and this becomes clear when one studies the Soviet defenses and the forces Germany brought forth. Hitler allowed the Afrika Korps and an Italian force to be destroyed in North Africa. They could have come in handy in defending Sicily and Italy. The invasions were about to take place. As Rommel said, failing to stop the Western Allies at the beach really screwed things up for them badly. The Normandy invasion could have been fought off if Hitler had not been asleep and Rommel had not been celebrating his wife's birthday. The mighty panzer divisions halted as the Allied infantry stormed the beaches. As the U.S., British, and others allies dashed across France, the Soviets launched Operation Bagration, which took out Army Group Center and left and led to an advance all the way to the outskirts of Warsaw. This was due to Army Group Center being deployed too far forward and failing to place a commander of great talent at the helm. They later did that after the damage had been done. Lack of a strategic bomber was a huge handicap. The Luftwaffe was the best tactical air force of World War II, but it did not have the strategic bombers or escort fighters with the range needed to hit key industrial targets in the UK or USSR, let alone the USA. Germany produced many great fighters and fighter bombers, along with countless aces for both. However, none of it could get to the industrial points that were cranking out replacement tanks, artillery, aircraft, and weapons like clockwork. After the Industrial Revolution, the most important aspect to industrial warfare became industrial capacity. Wars are not won on the battlefield, but in the factory. Germany did not have the industry needed to produce enough equipment to fight the world's biggest colonial empire, the world's largest army, the USSR, and the greatest industrial power, the USA, all at one time. Germany had 14.4% of the world's industrial capabilities, compared to 10.3% for Britain, 14% for the USSR, and 41% for the USA, which is roughly a 6-to-1 ratio. Intelligence. The famed German enigma had been cracked by the Poles before the war started. The Germans had a lot of trouble gathering intel on the Allies. However, many spy rings existed in occupied territories that provided a great deal of critical war-winning information about the Soviets and Western Allies. The German intelligence, and especially counterintelligence, should have gotten more attention than it did. There is a reason why Sun Tzu says, "Know your enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles you'll never be in peril," and devoted a whole chapter towards his book on how to use spies. And now we come to Leesland. FDR took full advantage of the industrial capabilities of the USA and sent huge amounts of supplies to the UK and USSR. This allowed both of them to replace losses and keep their troops supplied with all this stuff. All this stuff took a huge strain off the Allied agricultural and industrial production and further pressed German war efforts to keep up with the Allies, which were already hard enough. Failure to mobilize soon enough. This should have been done after Operation Barbarossa, but it wasn't done until after Stalingrad. It would have made the Wehrmacht a lot stronger than it was historically. But Blitzkrieg had produced quick victories time and time again. I know you can all scream hindsight, 2020 hindsight, but in total war is needed when you open up a second front in a two-front war. It's not nice to subject the population to things like rationing, universal conscription, or putting women into your factory, but fighting a war sometimes you gotta go all the way with. You gotta go all the way with it. By the end of the war, Germany was fighting a four-front war: the Eastern Front, the Western Front, the Italian Front, and the genocide that was the Holocaust. The fourth was counterproductive in every way, shape, and form. It destroyed many potential allies such as Ukrainians, Belarusians, Baltic peoples, and Jewish geniuses. It wasted a large amount of resources and manpower into a pointless and self-defeating task. The path to victory lay not in a single massive war, but in a number of smaller wars, one by one paving the way to victory. Hitler appointed more people who were more in tune with his ideas, i.e. yes-men, such as Himmler, Göring, and others to field command, especially towards the end. He put the ME-262 project on hold. He could have had it out in 1942, but Hitler didn't like it. He wanted fast bombers, which was really stupid. This is due to him. He puts. Hold on.